Hi, everyone. Katie Anderson here, and I am so thrilled to be speaking with Jim Benson about his new book, The Collaboration Equation. I just had a chance to read it this week, and you can see with all the stickies here that there's a lot to talk about and a lot of great takeaways. So listen in and provide your comments later too. We'd love to hear from you. Jim, welcome to my author interview series.
It's good to be here.
Great. We were just talking about when the first time was that we met, which I think it was, we've known each other for years, but it was about 2017 at the Lean Coaching Summit. You were leading a Lean Coffee and we were up in Seattle. So
yeah, Josh and me. Yeah,
that was great.
Yeah. Well, the thing I like most about doing those large scale Lean coffees is just that you have a whole room full of people that are staring at you, and in less than 10 minutes, they're all talking.
Yep.
It's all activity, and you can go from being at the front of the room to being almost entirely ignored. It's a beautiful and rapid transition. I love it.
It is the best facilitation skill is to be as lazy as possible to get everyone else to talk. And that's your success as a facilitator when it's not you doing all the talking, but you've created that framework and the structure for engagement and collaboration, which is the topic of your book and what I'm excited to dive into with you here today. So before we get started, maybe you could tell everyone a little bit about yourself for some context.
Okay. I'm Jim Benson. The quick nickel tour of me is I have been thinking about ways that people collaborate and engaged in collaboration for as long as I can remember. And first, like major collaborations were in high school when I had a punk band in the middle of Nebraska. We had to figure out every business element of having a band. So how do we play? How do we get money? How do we distribute records? How do we make them? So all of those things at the age of like 14 or 15, how to play in a bar that doesn't allow people under 21 in when you're 15, that type of thing. And of course, then doing that in a place that was actively hostile to us and our product. From there, after high school, figured out that probably wasn't a good long-term solution for like a career. Went into psychology, realized that if I got a degree in that, I would only hang out with psychologists. So then I went into urban planning and civil engineering. And did that, became a transportation engineer and an urban planner, and did really weird, crazy projects after that. I built subways, freeways, things with multi-billion-dollar price tags, but also things that required a lot of interjurisdictional collaboration. Giant regions like the Seattle region or the Phoenix region or Los Angeles. Or one of my favorite projects was getting products across the Mexican border at the Nogales border crossing between Arizona and Sonora. That was the first project that I ever did a value stream map for, a grape coming from Michoacan, getting all the way to an Albertsons. It ended up being so long that it wrapped twice around the conference room that I was presenting it in. I did the value stream map in Corel Draw, so it was a very long time ago. 96, I think. But that was my first taste of actual process. Somewhere in there, I ran a major part of the Names Project AIDS Memorial Quilt, started a software company, did a bunch of other things. And then those things all led to me starting to build tools for collaboration and Lean, like Lean Coffee or Kanban or personal Kanban or things like that. And in a nutshell, that's me. I guess now I have an online school called Modus Institute, which is also a community where people around the world talk about Lean and Agile and the future of work.
Yeah, awesome. That's
a big nickel,
context to lead up to my next question. So if you look at that whole arc and where you're at today, what was it that really inspired you to write this book, The Collaboration Equation? And maybe what was the problem you were trying to solve?
I am a person of copious inspirations. So trying to pull something coherent out of that is going to be interesting for me. So all of the things that I have enjoyed doing have involved groups of people who actually care about the product coming together and figuring out how to create that product. And that could have been, again, it could have been music, it could have been the quilt, it could have been roadways or what have you. Portland, I had a beautiful experience being an urban planner in Portland, Oregon. But when I set out to write the book, The Collaboration Equation, I had told people that my goal was to become the Kurt Vonnegut of management. So I wanted this to be one of those stories. So almost every Kurt Vonnegut book is a thinly veiled book about Kurt Vonnegut. Almost everything is like something he's desperately grappling with in his own life, past, present, or future, which is also why in his books things bounce back and forth between past, present, and future. So this book started off as a 750-page sarcasm rant experience that Tom Ehrenfeld, my editor, promptly beat out of the book. It is now a very focused book on how groups come together and collaborate. So I didn't get the Vonnegut part in there, but what I did get in there was the storytelling part of the book. So when information comes without context, you put it into an arbitrary context almost immediately. So when I set out to write this book, I was like, I'm going to give all of these stories, and they're case studies, if we want to call them that, but what they really are is they're making sure that the context for the information in that chapter or that section is told in a way that has the care that Kurt Vonnegut told his stories. So he cared a lot about all of his customers, all of his subjects, regardless of how awful those people might be. And so I tell stories about some of my clients, some of whom are really awesome, and some of whom required the same care as some of the Kurt Vonnegut characters. So that's my main inspiration is, could I tell a set of stories that really helped people learn that they need to work, that somebody's not just going to come in and bless them with the lean stick or the agile stick or something.
Yeah. And that's great. And one of the things I thought was really powerful, you did that quite successfully, is the storytelling in there. And you do have some sarcastic humor in there too. So
it wouldn't be me without it.
It didn't get stripped out. Really great visuals and storytelling and examples about how you've helped companies apply these concepts and how others can do the same. So I thought that was a really powerful highlight of the book.
Companies and agencies and groups.
Yeah.
I've worked a lot with government and governments around the world, from everything down from a very local government to the UN. And what I find is that all governments and all corporations are the same thing. They're individuals and teams creating value.
And trying to work together, but often having things getting in the way of that. That leads to, there was a quote early in the book that really stood out to me, in particular around something you just said around our lean and agile practices. And I want to read the quote, and then maybe you can talk about it. So this is on page 30. You said, "Today, we regularly build and maintain anti-collaborative cultural patterns without realizing it. Our lean and agile rhetoric works against its original intent. We're anxious to blindly follow the patterns, not thoughtfully deploy them to solve problems or make things better." And I thought that was spot on. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, what you observe and how this sort of led into more like some of the content of the book.
Well, and I think so I'm assuming that most people listening are in one way or another a lean practitioner. And I think we've all gone into a place or talked to people and are like, oh God, lean, I hate lean. And it's like, it is actually functionally impossible to hate lean. All lean means is that tomorrow sucks less than today, and you really can't hate that. but what they do hate is that they've had senseis or bullies or jerks come in and use lean as an excuse, or have interpreted lean in a way that's heavy-handed. And there's one very painful moment that's not in the book, where I was in a city in the Midwest, and it was me, guy with lean name, and then other lean sensei with lean name, and other guy and I went to visit a set of plants in this city and talk about what we saw, right? And he pulled an utter ono on every one of them. He went in and he's like, that's bad. That's bad. I don't even know why I'm here. That's so bad. You're bad. You're badder than the bad guy. And these people were honestly trying to make their work better. And it didn't meet with his expectations. So he gets to the last company and he blows up on them, and then he leaves. And everybody in the room is completely demoralized. And there was like literally 40 people in this big room sitting around this big circle, and they're all just like, and I just looked at them and I was like, you guys are so bad. Everything's bad. Let's go look how bad everything is. And they just looked at me and I just started laughing. I was like, you guys have completely nailed it. What you did out there. And I listed all of these things. I said, this was cool. This was cool. This was cool. And they also had done some things that you don't see very often. Like they actually had their salespeople involved in how they were setting up their processes. So they were doing, in restaurant, what would be back of house and front of house were working together. And that is I spend so much time deprogramming people from bad lean and agile coaches because they come with the tools first. And that just chafes me.
I'm so right there with you too, Jim. The principles and practices of lean are actually so people-centered and full of respect and collaboration and creative learning. But some of the way it's been applied and translated has really given it a bad name. In my book, Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn, I share how from Mr. Isao Yoshino's experience of being at Toyota through the 60s into the 2000s, Toyota made a conscious decision to actually move away from more of that rough Ono style leadership to one that was much more people-centered, a leader as coach and people developer. And that's somehow that got missed in our translation and our focus on just myopic focus on waste elimination, which is important, but that's the byproduct of cultivating collaboration and people's creativity. So I think you and I could probably go on that one.
Waste reduction is a means to an end. It's not the end in of itself. We would never have at the end of any value stream map, and we reduced waste, because that wouldn't be value add.
No. Yeah. And I love this focus that you have on collaboration. As I was reading your book too, I was thinking back to my early days of when I was first learning lean, and I was working in a children's healthcare hospital. And the thing that really just it actually made me a convert was pulling people together to solve problems where they had maybe never had that opportunity to collaborate. They were working in their silos and never had the chance to sort of see each other's work or to solve a problem they all cared about. It'd be like wait time in the pediatric cancer center. And, when you can foster that collaboration, that is where the joy came and the real problem solving. So I thought how you really nailed that so well in your book, and also help provide ways and methods that people can really foster that collaboration.
Yeah, that was the big thing, is that I realized I spent a lot of time working with John Shook and with others. I spent a lot of time visiting. If you go to the Modus site, we have over 100 clients on the site. It's been a whirlwind of last 15 or 20 years. And so many people are like, we've started our lean journey, we've started our agile journey, our CI journey, our whatever we want to call our journey. And we keep getting lost, and they keep getting lost because they're focused on the tools, and they haven't taken the time to actually not just define, but also instantiate their culture. And so if you build an Obeya, if you do an A3, it should not operate at cross purposes to your culture. And so what we would see all the times is people would put up, a Jim Benson style Kanban on a wall, and then they would make themselves slaves to that board. Our work has to flow this way. We have to get this done. And it's like, oh, no, no. Your process is the way that the people on your teams interact. And they need to have that as an agreement in and of themselves. It doesn't come from a book somewhere. It's, what do you need to do to get the work done?
Absolutely. And, I was just talking actually the time of this recording to Asao Yoshino in Japan last night. We're preparing a workshop on how to create a more powerful A3. But the whole point is the template doesn't matter. It's a framework to help you. But he says, like, create your own framework based on what you need. And that sounds like we offer these frameworks and tools as a starting point, but it's about how are you collaborating? How are you sharing knowledge? How are you communicating? That's what's the most important.
So like for like Miro, they wanted me to make an A3 template. And I was like, my A3 template would have a sentence that would say, make your own damn A3 template. What I love, and when I'm teaching like personal Kanban classes or other classes, and we get to the A3 part, I tell people, just Google image A3 thinking.
Yes.
And you will get 70 different versions of an A3, and all of them are valid. Yes. You don't need the leaper on it.
No, absolutely. It's the thinking process. And have you answered several questions and visually conveyed it? Like it's like leading with the principles, not the rigidity. And I'm so aligned with you on that. You actually were leading into a quote that I wanted to read, because I think this is really powerful too. And we've talked about it a bit, but you say on page 130, without understanding your culture, you will never obtain a culture of continuous improvement. And then you go on to talk about how people can understand their culture. Maybe you can, what have you come to learn about that value of understanding your culture and how that influences how we create continuous improvement cultures?
So years ago, we went to work for a company. Before we arrived at that company, the upper management of that company took us out for coffee, and they said, we have to warn you that we don't actually have the best and brightest here. So you're probably used to working with the best and brightest. We don't have that. And so we're like, okay. So then we go in and work with these people. Most of them don't have a college degree. They are very down on themselves, very frustrated with themselves. And we say, right now you're doing and we go through all these things, and we're like, this is really silly. This is really silly. Yeah, we do silly things because we're so stupid. And we said, you don't have to do those silly things. Like, what do you mean? I was like, you can do anything else that you want. And so we gave them a little bit of structure, and then we left for a month, and then came back. And in that month, they built a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful system. And they were going crazy, and their throughput was through the roof, and their quality was through the roof, and they were training each other, and they were laughing, and they were enjoying being at work. And they said, we just wish that we were able to do this before. And one of their bosses said, look, I told you guys you had agency. You can't tell someone that they have agency you cannot command someone to be free. They're actually, freedom isn't just the absence. Freedom isn't anarchy, no matter what my teenage punk rockers might have thought. Freedom is a system that allows you to act with confidence. It gives you the information that you need when you need it. It recognizes when you've made a decision. It gives you the opportunity to learn and share learning and so on. And so what was happening was, and what happens all the time, is bosses will come in and say, we have no tolerance for a lack of psychological safety, or there will be no more institutional bias in this company. And then they will leave, and people are like, wow, I feel safe and unbiased now.
Yeah.
We actually have to do the work.
And we have to show up that way, embody it. So, yep, the decree does not create the culture.
No.
So I was really intrigued by your 5 principles of collaboration. Principle 1, paying attention. Principle 2, give a damn. Principle 3, improvement is your job. Principle 4, information drives action. And principle 5, trust but visualize.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come up with this succinct list of 5? And that's my first question. And then the second is, where do you usually start when you're working with an organization?
Okay, so the first question I will answer completely honestly, because Tom Ehrenfeld made me.
Another reason you have a good editor.
he's like, you need to list out the principles. And so it actually took a while, because it started off, like Deming's 14 points, that became 16, then 21, then 14 again, and so forth. You play with these concepts because you want to be general enough in them to inspire action, but you want to be specific enough to not inspire the wrong action. And so for me, those last 2 are particularly important. The trust but visualize one, playing a little bit off of the Reagan era perestroika stuff, is that no matter how much I trust you or you trust me, there's too much going on every day for us to keep track of it or update each other verbally or in a document. So if we have an Obeya, and in that room, all of the information is in there that keeps us informed, that passive information radiator allows us not just to continue trusting, but to build more trust. So if you're off in your silo and you're working and I can't see you, I don't know what you're doing. And the longer that goes on, the more I start to worry that you're not getting your stuff done, because I know that I'm not getting my stuff done. So in any organization that I've been in, healthcare, construction, software development, international development, whatever, government, if people can see what's going on, they do a better job. And I've got 40 million stories to tell for that, but I will tell the super quick one, which is in LEI had a long-standing relationship with the GE large appliance division in Louisville, Kentucky. And if you went into plant 5 of that facility, you would find that plant 5 was very different from the other plants. And one of the things they had was a big Obeya that they called the Blue Room. The Blue Room had tons of information in it: sales, distribution, how many refrigerators were dropped last week in Oregon, things like that. And the people on the line came in often. I'm not going to say every day, but some of them did come in every day to find out what was going on. And it drastically changed how they did their job. Did they need to know sales data? No, they didn't. Did it make them feel? No, not did it make them feel. Did it actually make them part of the process? Yes. So the provision of information isn't just a gift that you give people to make them feel good. It's something that they really did need to understand the context of their work.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that story and an example. Right? It's that like visualizing and I always say we need to make the invisible visible, and that's such a key tenet. So, I mean, that goes from the personal Kanban to just visualizing information and sharing it so that we can all have a better sense of what's happening.
No one can act on information they don't have.
Right.
And you don't know at any given point in time what actions they're capable of taking.
That's beautiful too, because that's giving, it's seeing the potential in people, and right, like that's how we lift people up, and the creativity and the capability is there if we can provide space for that to thrive and be nurtured.
Yeah.
Later in the book too, you talk about how leadership differs from other functions such as administration and management, which I thought was a really nice clarification of leadership, and that leadership doesn't have to necessarily be a functional management role. Yet these are all really important roles. Yeah. So if you think about those three things, like what is one thing you've personally had to adjust in your style to become a better collaborative leader?
A better collaborator to give people the space to lead.
Right.
So in chapter 8, I try my best to debunk almost every management book, every leadership book that's ever been written. I go directly for the jugular for people like Jack Welch. And the reason is because I commonly see management confused with leadership. And leadership is an action that helps further the progress of the project being undertaken. And that can be vision, it can be implementing a new tool, it can be an innovation, whatever it might be. So when building any project, not surprisingly, I try to make sure everything's visual. But the other thing that we do is we start with the previous chapters of the book where we try to build what's called a right environment. And that right environment is the group that's doing the work, regardless of level, getting together and discussing what the details are of that work. So we do a value stream map, but our value stream mapping tools are extended from the usual toolkit. So we look at relationships, we look at collaborative opportunities, things like that. Then the group goes through and says, okay, now what is our culture? And we do that through a series of interactive exercises, not through people saying, I think it's this, because you won't get anything useful out of that. But not to go into too much detail, a pretty detailed collaborative exercise to figure out what the culture is. Yeah, it's a good chunk of the book. Then the communications agreement. And the reason that's important is, again, because people run on information. Even if they're screwing in wiring harnesses in the back of a double door, bottom drawer fridge in Louisville, Kentucky, they run on information. And so we want to find out what information we're exchanging, how we exchange it, what tools we use, in what tools does our information go to die? How often every day do we ask each other, hey, what was this decision we made? Or where is this? Or where's this document? Or blah, 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 blah. Do we know where our information is? And then at the end of that, you build out a plan for how you're going to work together. The reason that comes before leadership is because that provides people with the bedrock, the foundation on which to, what the book calls, act with confidence. Acting with confidence is leadership. It's saying, okay, right now I see that the group has this need, the product has this need, the company has this need, Earth has this need. I can help do that. Personally, for me, to go back all the way back and answer the original question, what I've had to adjust in me is, obviously from the way I'm speaking right now, I can lecture and I can be really bombastic. And I can just go. And so what I have to do is I have to go in with exercises that specifically make me shut up. Then I can point to things when they happen and say, here's a mini lecture, but the lectures always come with confidence. The leadership from me always comes with confidence with context. And the actions of the group then spur from those seedlings.
well, right, you're leading or teaching based on what's needed or the context to move things forward rather than just pontificating. So be focused. That's great. Thank you for sharing your own tidbit and also going into more of the framework of how you help organizations really create that bedrock of that foundational understanding for themselves of the right learning environment or the right environment.
Right environment.
So now I'm going to switch a little bit into the process of actually writing this book, the collaboration equation. You've already shared that it started off, and you talk about this at the end of the book, like 600 pages or something that your editor Tom helped whittle down to half that. What is one thing that you discovered or learned with a new perspective through the process of writing the book?
Life is a combination of discovery and rediscovery. So Paul Simon put that as the future is beauty and sorrow. So what fascinates me about, this is a weird sentence, what fascinates me about myself, it's so fascinating, and about writing this book is a number of lessons that I relearned while going through the book. So one of the things that you never do but wish you had done at the beginning of a project is take more pictures. I had so many different visualizations of how this book was flowing that were used for a while, ran their course, and had to be replaced with entirely different visualizations. And there were big chunks of time in there where that first visualization would drop off, and then there would be nothing. During the time that there was nothing, my stress level would go through the roof. And I, the almighty Jim Benson, would live like that for days, weeks, months, because this book took 6 years to write. And every time I would come up with a new visualization, I would calm down. I'd be like, oh man, I feel so much better. God, I should have remembered that. And then that visualization would run its course and I would do it again. because I'm human. And I hate that. So Daniel Kahneman in Thinking Fast and Slow says, being aware of a cognitive bias does not make you immune to the cognitive bias. Hofstadter's law says that human beings will underestimate any complex task, even if they're aware of Hofstadter's law. I know that Jim Benson has this law I haven't quite written out yet, but there's this law that basically says you will get it together and then you will fall apart, and then you'll get it together again and then you will fall apart, even if you're aware of Jim Benson's law of falling apart. So the key thing for me there is when we're involved in a group, there's always others that have your back, that will keep the visualizations going when you start to fall off, will keep the process in check when you start to fall off. They can watch you start to fall off and provide care and vice versa. And it's really hard to do that when we treat our work as solo work. Really, 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 really hard. And so lots of people will say, hey, I read Personal Kanban. I loved it. I did it for a while. And then I couldn't anymore. And it's like, really? Did your fingers break? Did you run out of Post-it notes? It's like, no, you fell off the wagon. Get back on. Get back on.
Yeah. Well, that's where the structure helps. But I love what you said too. It's that you are part of a team and other people can help lift you up in those times that you're falling apart. So how to not isolate ourselves and to leverage those around us, because we're all probably falling apart and coming together at different times. So that's the beauty of the team, right? Or the collaboration as well.
Yep. Creative regenerative decay. And I mean, for people like you and me, where we do a lot of traveling, and we're on our own, so from often, it becomes hard to figure out how that collaboration works or should work.
That's true. I mean, have to intentionally seek out people with whom to collaborate
Mm-hmm.
or to have conversations or to help me. I personally have learned I do not work best in isolation. I mean, there is time to be processing, reflecting, and the process of writing. Sometimes you need that alone time.
Yep.
You need to come together and build off of with other people as well. So 1 + 1 equals much more than 2. And and certainly much more than 1 by itself. So, all right. So we're into my last question. It's been such a great conversation, but, and I know that you have many ways that you could answer this, but what is one question that I haven't asked you or that you're not usually asked about the book? What is that one question? And then what's your answer?
Now I just have to figure out how to word it. Why are process and people the same thing?
Right. So why are process and people the same thing? Thank you for that great question.
So I remember let's see if I can tell us without tearing up. You lose a lot of people over the course of a lifetime. Years ago, I was maybe 21 or 22, and I'd gone back to Grand Island, Nebraska over the holidays, and I got together with a lot of my old bandmates, and we were in Corey's living room, and we were recording stuff. And Dave Fisher walks in, and he has this piece of paper with writing all over it in every direction, and he says, here's the song we're going to record next. And we all went over and we looked at it, and we made some noises, and then all of a sudden fell into recording this song called Money. Yeah, I think that was the song. And everything about that moment was completely comfortable. Anyone could screw up any of their parts on any instrument, and other people would carry them along. The song ended up having like 5 sections that just evolved on their own, and it flowed. It's just really fun, beautiful song. And no, it wasn't a thrash hardcore punk song. It was kind of like this weird bluegrassy new wave thing. But there, and when I was working on the quilt, obviously no one was paid to work on the Names Project AIDS Memorial quilt, but in creating it, we created the largest memorial in history, the largest public art project in history, and helped tens or hundreds or thousands, maybe millions of people grieve and express themselves. All of that was people coming together for a specific goal. And there's one story in the book where there's this team, there's this company, and the company is literally about to implode because of their own, we'll just say their own level of defects. And the whole company has to come together to fix this. It's kind of, you would swear that I had walked into a theory of constraints playhouse, but everyone had to come together to swarm on this one constraint. And before we started, everyone was angry. They were angry with each other. They were angry with the problem. They were angry with having to interrupt their work to do this other stuff. The moment they started working on it, the goal was clear. The huge complexity of solving the problem was clear. And everyone rose to that challenge because everyone rose to that challenge. The people in that place were the process. We didn't have to tell them, you do this and you do this or you do this. They set up their own egalitarian system of how to do that. And when those things happen, product is better, it happens faster, and you go home energized. And that's what the book is for, and that's what I want for people. And I tried my best throughout it to provide practical ways to achieve it.
great answer to a really provocative question. Thank you for talking to me about the collaboration equation. I highly recommend people check it out. There's, some really wonderful insights we've just scratched the surface on today. As you can tell, Jim's a great storyteller, and this book is full of stories and great visualization across the whole book as well. So you came back, you pulled it together, you got the visuals in there.
When the first version of this book came back from my designer, I literally cried.
Tears of joy or tears of sorrow?
Oh, no, because it was the book was beautiful. And at the end of 6 years, you really needed to see something beautiful. And the book is gorgeous.
The book is gorgeous. So having a little side bit here, having written and created my own book, Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn, I didn't want it to just look like a traditional business book, and wanted some like visualization and graphics in there too.
Yeah.
And yours takes visualization to a whole nother level, which fits the content. But I thought you did a wonderful job, both in the writing and in the visualization layout and the color. So well done on that. You can see all my, sticky notes in here as well. So thank you. And I encourage people to go pick it up. Where can people get the collaboration equation, Jim?
The easiest place is on Amazon. Yep. I hate to say it. I probably shouldn't say it, but the easiest place is on Amazon.
Yep, I agree. Best place to get my book too. Just-in-time printing is pretty fantastic. And if people want to reach out to you, learn more about your work and your company's work, where should they go?
So you want to go to modusinstitute.com, and you can sign up for the network there for free. You will join me and about now 2,500 other professionals worldwide trying to solve these problems. And all you have to do is DM me once you get in there. So I am the most reachable I have ever been. So please do reach out. I'll obviously love to talk about these things.
Yeah, great. And I encourage everyone to send comments about this interview and questions that you have for either Jim or me as well in any of the locations that we are publicizing the interview, as well as on my website, kbjanderson.com, where this interview will be living. So thank you so much, Jim. It's been an absolute pleasure. Again, if you want to learn, you can watch this in video on YouTube, audio on your favorite podcast, or read the highlights on my blog, again, kbjanderson.com. And it's been a pleasure to talk with you, Jim.
It's been a pleasure. And I get highlights, even better.
Yay! And a special teaser for those of you who are listening now, who during the time that we are releasing this book, Jim is giving away 3 copies of the collaboration equation to anyone around the world. So sign up for the giveaway in the links that we'll be putting below, all the links below, for a chance to win one of 3 copies of the collaboration equation. So thanks, Jim, for giving that as a gift. Oh yeah, let's do this so we can do a little photo for everyone.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, and make sure you share your lucky URL to increase your odds of winning.